Broken Dawn Day 1. I can't believe what just happened. It was like the sky exploded. There was this blinding light, brighter than anything I've ever seen. Nothing works anymore. No phones, no internet. Dad's old radio crackled something about a gamma ray burst. Everyone is scared. My little brother Rohan is crying. Mom and Dad are staying strong for us, but the grave expression on Mom's face says everything. I'm scared too, but I can't show it. Not now. Day 7. Hospitals are overflowing. Priya from next door is really sick. Her skin looks burned, and she can't stop vomiting. Our neighborhood is in chaos. People are fighting over food and water. Dad tried to get more supplies, but he came back with just a few cans. I don't understand why this is happening. It feels like a nightmare. Day 14. The crops are dying. Our garden, which was always so green, is now brown and lifeless. Animals are dying too. The air smells terrible, like something burning. We can't drink the water anymore. It makes us sick. Dad says we need to be strong, but he looks weaker every day. I'm trying to help Mom, but there's so little we can do. Day 21. Delhi is in chaos. We heard on the radio that the government declared martial law, but it's not helping. People are desperate. We've seen gangs roaming the streets. We stay inside as much as we can. I try to keep my brother Rohan calm, but he's so scared. I am too. The world outside our door is falling apart. Day 28. Food is almost gone. We're down to the last few cans. The air is getting harder to breathe. It's so hot all the time now, and there hasn't been any rain. Dad is coughing a lot. He says it's nothing, but I know he's lying. Mom prays every night, but I'm starting to lose hope. I miss school. I miss my friends. I miss feeling safe. Day 35. Dad is gone. He died last night. We couldn't do anything to save him. We buried him in the backyard, but it feels wrong. Everything feels wrong. Mom is barely holding on. Rohan is too young to understand. He keeps asking when things will get better. I don't have any answers. I just want to hold him and never let go. Day 42. There's no more food. We haven't eaten in days. Mom is very weak. She can barely stand. I'm scared she won't make it. The air is so toxic now. My skin feels like it's burning all the time. We've heard rumors of people turning to cannibalism. I can't let that happen to us. I won't. Day 49. Mom passed away in her sleep. I buried her next to Dad. Rohan's crying all the time. I don't know how to comfort him. The nights are the worst. So quiet. So dark. I feel like we're the last people alive. I don't know how much longer we can go on. I don't want to die, but I don't see any way out of this. Day 56. I'm so weak. We haven't had any food or clean water in days. Rohan's barely conscious. I can't leave him, but I don't know how to save him. My vision is blurry, and it's getting harder to breathe. I think about the end a lot. Day 57. This will be my last entry. I can barely hold the pen. Rohan's gone. I held him as he took their last breath. I'm so tired. I'm so scared. I don't want to be alone. I can hear the wind howling outside. It sounds like it's crying too. I'm going to lie down next to my family now. I hope we'll be together again somewhere better. Good night. My brother's starting acting strange after our father's death. Ever since our father died because of a bear attack, my brother John started acting weird. He locked himself away from everybody and kept on watching movies about people getting tortured. I didn't think much of it. Some people are into watching that type of stuff, but the timing made it seem weird. Our mom came to visit me and John. Her and Dad had been divorced for a long time now. From what I can remember, it was because of Mom's intense drinking habits. Now she went and bettered herself, admitting her mistakes. When John saw Mom, he didn't pay attention to her at all. He just walked by, as if the two of us didn't exist. Later, when Mom was gone, I confronted him about it, and he wasn't even looking at me, or at least talking to me. "What's wrong, John?" I asked him calmly. He looked up and pointed at the ceiling. "The only thing you saw was Dad's lifeless body, glued to the ceiling. My friend, the shadow ghost." It happened like a year ago. While I was in the kitchen, I was preparing my coffee because it was early morning and I was ready to go to work. I grabbed the milk from the fridge, and after I turned around, I saw off to the corner a black round head and a long neck. After I looked at it, it disappeared. I grabbed my phone and wanted to call the emergency services, but I said, "And what the fuck are they going to do? Call the Ghostbusters." I put the phone down and went in all the rooms to search the ghost. I didn't find it, so I thought that it disappeared forever. I went to work and I said what happened to me. Some of them didn't even believe. After I finished the work, I went home. Outside, it was already dark. It was winter. I live in an apartment at the last floor, and when I entered in the apartment, I realized that I left my backpack in the car, so I went back. After I closed the door, I saw the ghost. I saw it very clearly. It was going on the stairs, toward me at very high speed. I entered back in my apartment and closed the door, but later, with a knife in my pocket, I went to my car to get my backpack. Since then, I didn't see him anymore. My sleep demon. I went out with an unknown group on Halloween to collect candy. I can't recall the costumes we wore. It was already dark as we went from door to door. Arriving at an apartment with a stairwell illuminated through a window, I saw a black figure at the window. The body seemed human, but it had horns on its head and white glowing eyes. At that moment, I didn't understand what I had let in, what it meant, but all this was just a dream, a nightmare. In the following days, I didn't think much about this figure, as it seemed to be a one-time occurrence. However, from that dream onwards, I suffered from depression triggered by family, friendship, and school problems. At that time, I was 21 to 22 years old, studying and still living with my parents. The problems in my family had worsened due to the death of a family member. My friendships with two of my closest friends also began to crumble, as we were unable to have mature conversations about our problems. The increasing stress at university made it even harder for me to manage everything. A particularly strange experience happened during dinner with my family at my grandma's place. We were in her old apartment, although she hadn't lived there for 10 years. The place gave me goosebumps, old, gray, and smelling of cigarette smoke. The food tasted only of onions, which spoiled my appetite. While my family chatted and ignored me, I felt as if someone was looking over my shoulder. An uncomfortable feeling of being watched followed me. I felt a magical pull towards Grandma's bedroom, but as I entered, it became dark, and the sounds of dinner ceased. A dark shadow appeared on the wall, with a large hump, horns, and white eyes. Panic gripped me, and I just wanted to flee. My eyes slowly closed and reopened. I was lying in my bed, drenched in sweat, looking around. I couldn't move, and the blanket felt heavy on me. The depression intensified, and my behavior became increasingly strange. I felt as if someone else had taken over me. Indecision, confusion, and fear accompanied me from then on. The nightmares became more frequent, and I suffered from sleep paralysis. Again and again, I thought I saw someone out of the corner of my eye, or saw someone fleeting by. But the worst was the sleep demon, who lurked as a silent observer in my dreams. He blended into the surroundings, sometimes a drawing, sometimes a shadow or an outline. But no matter how he appeared, he took my breath away. A particularly oppressive experience happened when I was climbing a staircase with my mother. The way seemed endless. The walls were white and the stairs yellow with black steps. The atmosphere was gray and empty. The higher we climbed, the emptier and grayer it became. Finally, we reached an apartment door, opened by an unknown woman. As we entered, I stood by the window and saw him standing there with his hump, his horns, and the glowing white eyes. He showed me a suffocating smile with his sharp teeth. Emotionless, I followed the woman into the room she wanted to show us. But the room was charred, and the furniture looked as if it had melted. Panic gripped me, and I felt an indescribable fear. Darkness surrounded me, with no solid ground and no clear sight. Everything I tried to hold onto turned to smoke and vanished. A deep, dark hole formed in my stomach, swallowing all the good and bright things until only darkness remained. Did I feel guilty about everything? Was I wrong? Was I just a burden? Was I in everyone's way? I wandered along a beach, the surroundings veiled in darkness. Is this really a beach? I heard the sound of the waves, but saw no water. The sand beneath my feet did not give way easily, but it tickled with every step. Without thinking, I followed the endless beach and let myself drift. Now I am 23 years old. The phase of depression is over, and I have regained my balance by practicing acceptance and taking care of my body, mind, and surroundings. The sleep demon has not appeared in my dreams for 6 months, and I can now sleep without any issues. Was he real or just a manifestation of my problems, or a part of myself? To me, he seemed very real, and even if not, it seems he only embedded himself in me because I had lost my inner balance and could only drive him away by returning to that balance. Bloody signs of Satan. You know the first rule of abandoned buildings: no graffiti, run. So in my story, there were graffiti, but they indicated danger. I was 15 years old. I often climbed through various abandoned places. My friend and I wanted to explore an abandoned place on the outskirts of the city. We stocked up on a knife, flashlights, light bulbs, and necessary first aid items. We agreed to meet at 21.30. After all, it's scarier and more interesting at night. We met, and a friend said, "You can wait for my friends." I didn't mind, we waited. They were gone for about an hour, but they still came. I was the first to enter the abandoned building. I saw a symbol with an asterisk in a circle and an inverted cross. We didn't know what it meant. I saw a note on the floor. I took it to read, and it said, "Invoco te, Deum meum, Satanam meam, molabo tibi coitus populorum." But we didn't plan to retreat. We looked at our feet. After all, in an abandoned place, there are always syringes, fittings, and sharp knives lying around. We went up to the 3rd floor. We smelled rot. We put on our masks and explored. In the middle of the corridor, we saw a light. There were people in red cloaks. They spoke in an incomprehensible language. And there we saw a tied-up man. He tried to scream, to get out, but his attempts were to no avail. The strange people stopped saying something, and one took a knife and stabbed the man to death. After that, They began to disperse, and one saw us. He shouted, "Witnesses, catch them." We started running as fast as we could. We were very scared. Most got out, but one slipped under on the way out and was grabbed. We couldn't save him. Everyone went home, and the next day our friend was declared missing. Since then, I have a note that I picked up from an abandoned place. Something is creepy about my friend's family. I had a friend named Amy. She was a shy person, but I was always there to encourage her, or I helped her get things when she was sheepish at times. We were really close with each. Despite being in different grades, we managed to meet each other. One day, we were texting on the phone when she spontaneously texted me an invite to a dinner party that was going to start in the evening. I accepted the invite and told the punctual time I would be arriving at. When it was 6:40 p.m., I got out of bed and took a warm shower. After that, I dried myself up and wore my clothes. Then, I combed my hair and wore diamond earrings to match my outfit. I was so excited. I then hailed a cab by the sidewalk and told my location. While I was traveling, I texted her on the way. After a while, I arrived there. The house looked really strange, and the heat place was creepily quiet and cold, but I was sure I was gonna meet nice people. Well, it was something I didn't expect. Nobody greeted me, only Amy. The rest was staring down at me coldly. "Oh, so you are the one?" her mother said. "Yes, I'm her friend," I replied with a smile. She rudely smiled and left. I quietly sat on the couch, talking to Amy. On my right, I could see a couple of smokers staring at me. Finally, dinner was served. I arrived at the dinner table, and everyone was full on staring at me. And there was something fishy about the food. "Excuse, what did you cook?" I asked. Her sister looked angry and smiled. "Why? It's fried rice." "It smells weird," I said. "Is this beef?" "Oh, right, you are Indian. Here, let me get you the chicken salad." She got up from her spot and passed me the salad. It was a sheepish moment for me. It was 8 o'clock. Dinner finished. I was talking to Amy at the balcony. Then I experienced a sudden blackout. Then I woke up. Right, I was asleep. I was in the same dress. I jumped out of bed and ran downstairs. It was creepy. The mother in the kitchen seemed like a crazy lady chopping meat, her eyes in dark circles underneath, and her siblings were smoking. "You are a little shit, aren't you?" they said. I ignored it and ran away in a cab. It was so weird. How could she be leaving with them? My neighbor's basement is hiding something awful. I naturally fell into babysitting around the age of 14. Through friends and family, I got leads for babysitting to score some cash, which definitely beat having to work at a restaurant. The job had its ups and downs, but overall, it wasn't a bad gig at all. Yet, as many good experiences as I had, they were all eclipsed by one night. A new family in town talked to my dad at work, and it turned out that they needed a babysitter. I happily took the job and found myself watching their 10-year-old boy a couple of weeks later. There was nothing out of the ordinary about the family themselves. They were the model citizens of suburban America, complete with the white picket fence and blue shutters. Nothing about their house was strange or even unique. Their son, Avery, was very mild-mannered and polite. Even their car was basic. Not that these were bad things, but I expected it to be a very boring night. What I did not expect was the uncomfortable, inexplicable feeling that I got when I set foot in the house. A chill ran through me, but there was no draft. I rubbed my arms as I gazed at their staircase as we passed. They gave me a brief tour of the house before they left a note of instructions and all the usual information I expected from a job. While trying to figure out what was making me so uneasy about the place, I noticed something about their basement door when I passed it. A padlock was placed on the door, along with a deadbolt in place. "Any questions?" the father asked, as my mind was pulled out of my curiosity. "No, sir. Everything looks great." So they left, and Avery and I played some games before I made dinner. A couple of times, I thought I heard Avery call me into the den. Both times, I found him sitting on the couch in what most recognize as the TV zombie state. He denied having called me, and I went back to making dinner. After the third time, I told Avery it wasn't funny and that he should stop. "I'm not doing anything. I'm just watching TV." His voice went to that higher tone of pleading, sounding desperate for me to believe him. "Avery, I know it's my first time, and sometimes you want to test things out, but I'm trying to get dinner ready, so if you call me again, I'm not checking on you, okay?" I didn't say anything. The child glared at the TV with a pouting face, and I began to feel bad. As many times as I've heard lies, I was starting to sense that he was telling the truth. So what was I hearing? "Hey, it's fine. I'm not mad. Promise." Avery turned his head back towards me, seeming to test if I was the one fibbing now. "How about I let you stay up a little later if we forget about it? Do you really promise?" With our contractual pinkies interlocked, spirits were raised again, and I was able to finish dinner. Although I didn't finish without hearing Avery's voice calling me once more. I ignored it, and when Avery didn't mention it at dinner, I figured it was him fooling around again. The whole time we chatted as we ate, I couldn't help but feel that something was not right about this house. As hard as I tried to not look, my eyes kept diverting to the heavy padlock and chain on the basement door. Curiosity got the best of me, and as we were cleaning up, I couldn't help but ask, "So Avery, what's the deal with the basement door?" "What do you mean?" His words did not match his demeanor. It was obvious he didn't make eye contact as he forced his sentence out. "Come on, you know what I mean. The padlock, chain, and deadbolt. You all have dangerous chemicals down there." Avery's face grew paler, and he stared at the wall for a moment. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to tell me. I didn't mean to. Dad said no one can talk about it anymore." This really threw me off, and I couldn't possibly finish my sentence now. A thick veil of tension materialized between us. "So you guys aren't allowed to talk about it?" Avery shook his head. Okay, that's cool. No big deal." It was nothing but a big deal. Was their dad doing something illegal down there? Or was it something strange that no one could do anything about it? Maybe their dad was in denial about something going on. There were way too many questions going through my head now. "Hey, how about we put on a movie?" "Yeah, sure." What am I saying? Everyone likes movies, right? Now excited, we decided on a fun movie that quickly pulled our minds away from the mysterious basement door. Well, that's not entirely true. Maybe Avery was distracted, but it was killing me. As we ate popcorn, I couldn't help but watch Avery, wondering what was going on in that little head of his. Was there something awful going on in the house, and there was nothing I could do to stop it? Or maybe the dad was just... Stop, I told myself inwardly. Mulling over it all endlessly was not doing myself any favors. So the movie ended, and I ushered the drifting child to his bed. Now, the house was all to myself until 12, so I had a good 3.5 hours to myself. Immediately, I began texting my friend to tell her all about the weird experience I was having that night. She dismissed it, saying that I was getting spooked by a new place. This annoyed me to no end. I'd been at bigger, way creepier looking houses, but never got weird vibes like this. Then, I heard it. "Stephanie." I went instantly still and listened intently. "You didn't hear that, Steph. Just keep texting your friend and..." "Stephanie..." There was no mistaking it this time. It was definitely coming from the basement. The acoustics couldn't have been from Avery upstairs. The voice sounded like a little girl's. In fact, I'm not even sure he could make his voice like that anyway. Slowly, I stood up from the couch and approached the door. Maybe like earlier, I was just hearing things. Maybe being creeped out by the house was starting to mess with my head. That made sense. Right? "Stephanie?" I jumped back from the door, almost wetting myself in the process. There was no way I could dismiss it as anything else now. There was a little girl's voice coming from the basement. "Hello?" I responded. I couldn't keep my voice from shaking. "Is this Stephanie?" Yes, it's Stephanie. Can you help me? Who are you? Why are you locked in the basement?" "My name is Meredith Rosenberg. They kept me locked up for a long time now. The police were almost onto them, and that's why they moved. Can you get me out?" A cold shock washed over me and made it hard to respond. Was I actually babysitting for a family that kept a little girl prisoner? Oh my God. How long have you been locked up with them?" "Ever since I can remember." I felt somehow hot and cold at the same time and wanted to throw up. This all made sense now with what Avery had told me. Of course his father didn't want him talking about the door. "I just need to find the keys, and I can..." "They're hidden in the garage, underneath the metal shelf. It's inside a magnetic key holder." "Okay, just hold tight." In a panic to free the poor girl, I darted into the garage and began feeling the space underneath the bottom shelf. And sure enough, there was a magnetic key holder there. Running back, I popped the key holder open and began to insert the key into the padlock. "Did you find it?" "Yes, sweetie, I'm almost there." "Oh, please hurry. Sometimes they come home early." This sent me into even more of a rush, and I barely managed to fumble the key into the padlock. I finally heard the successful click of the padlock, pulled the chain off, and slid the deadbolt to the right. "I'm coming, Meredith. Hold on." I turned the doorknob and threw open the door, only to be met with darkness. Now full of adrenaline, my hands felt around for the light switch. Finally finding my purchase, I flicked the light on, which lit up most of the stairs. "Meredith?" I called out. Unless I was remembering it wrong, it sounded like her voice was just on the other side of the door a minute ago. In fact, it was quite strange that she wasn't waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Wouldn't you immediately run out of a basement that you were locked in for God knows how long? "I'm down here," the little girl's voice called out. Judging from the distance, it sounded like she was calling from somewhere at the bottom of the stairs. My brain suddenly began piecing all the details of this interaction together, and the idea of going down into the basement became absolutely terrifying. "Meredith, you can come up now. The door's open." I couldn't hide the tremor in my voice. Why I was scared of a little girl was beyond me, but much like the house itself, something felt very wrong here. "I hurt my leg. Ow. When you said you were getting the key, I went back down to get some of my things and got hurt." Her sounds of pain filled me with sorrow. but an invisible force was holding me back from taking another step into that basement. "Can you move? Maybe pull yourself up on the railing?" "I can't. It hurts too bad." "Okay, sweetie, what's wrong? Won't you help me?" It's just really dark down there, and I don't want to get hurt too. Is there any way you can get to the stairs? Any way at all? I tried to sit up, but my shoulder hurts too much." "I thought you said your leg got hurt." The words hung in the air like a noose. It was only after I said it that I realized there were several things seriously wrong about all of this. A question popped into my head I didn't even have time to think about until now. How did she know where the padlock key was? A deathly silence took up the space between me and wherever this girl was. It was a standoff, and I couldn't think of anything else to say. There were questions I could ask her to figure out what was happening, but I felt that her answers weren't going to be honest. Perhaps at this point, the truth was too frightful to know. "Meredith, are you still there?" It was a stupid question, but it was the only thing my mind could conjure. The additional silence only unnerved me, so I decided to try and get a better look. Fishing my phone out of my pocket, I clicked on the flashlight. It didn't do me any good because of the awful range, so I did the one thing I'd already told myself not to do. I took a step forward. Maybe it was the angle of the stairs or the lighting, but that one step gave me more information than I ever wanted to know. I caught a better view of the bottom step, which was essentially a ledge into a black abyss. Something looked different on this step, but it took a second to register what it was. The step was wet, a pool of some unknown liquid overflowing into the darkness of the basement. I knew for sure that the father hadn't mentioned any flooding, so it would be way too random for that. So I stood there, watching in frozen curiosity as the puddle then suddenly rippled, and I realized the abominable truth. It wasn't water, it was a puddle of saliva, and something was drooling into it from the dark. My wife of 7 years wore a red ribbon on her wrist. When I found out why, it shocked me to my core. I am 35, male, and have a wonderful wife who is 32, female. We have been married for 7 years and have 3 beautiful children that gave me shivers of excitement down my spine when they were born. My wife, Marianne, has suddenly been starting to wear a red ribbon around her wrist ever since our last date night, July 18th, 2023. I wonder sometimes why she wore it. The day I found out why she did was the day I almost hung myself out of confusion. "Honey, you're back from work," she said with a slight grin on her face, whilst tightening the ribbon around her wrist. "Hi, babe. The office was a bit crowded today, so my boss let me come home early." As I replied, a disgusting stench drafted into my nostrils. I immediately gagged, wondered what the hell the smell was, and noticed it came from the direction in which my wife sat. "Babe, what is that smell?" I say, pinching my nose in disgust. "Oh, nothing," she said a few moments later. I looked at the red ribbon and noticed it was a bit stained, so without warning, I just pulled it off. Beneath the ribbon was the most vile thing I have ever witnessed in my entire life. There, underneath the ribbon, was bits of torn flesh, rotting as maggots swarmed her hand. I instantly shrieked and ran out of the room, barfing in the bathroom. I'm currently writing this post as she is banging on the bathroom door, begging me to open it up. What should I do? This is the absolutely disturbing experience I had with my friend. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah and I went for vacation, just the two of us, to this Airbnb apartment in a calm neighborhood. We were exploring the place. It was cool. We liked it cozy and all. We unpacked our baggage, freshened up, and went outside to explore the areas. We returned at 11 p.m. and immediately felt something odd. I can guarantee my life that I left the living room's lights off, but they were on. Okay, no worries. Sarah just told me, "Oh, you probably forgot or something." I brushed it off, not taking it as a big deal. At first, I thought maybe the owner came in, but anyways, we went to the kitchen to make dinner while talking about Sarah's deceased boyfriend and how much she misses him and all. Liam, her deceased boyfriend, was a genuinely nice guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. We had our dinner while watching Conjuring 2. In bed, we kept hearing some loud banging at 2:30 a.m. from neighbors. It was really hard for us to have a good night's sleep because of the noises, but we managed to sleep anyways. Suddenly, Sarah's phone started ringing. "Who's calling at this time?" I said to Sarah. I looked at her. She was pale, like she saw a ghost. I asked her what was wrong. She received a text from Liam, her deceased boyfriend, saying, "I miss you." What kind of sick joke is that? Of course she tried to answer, asking who's this and why they're using Liam's phone. No answer. We kind of lost sleep. It was 4 a.m. Sarah was still spamming the number and calling, and of course straight to voicemail. I kept feeling some strange vibe, like someone is watching us or something. I didn't feel comfortable. Then she received another text. "Help me, it's cold and dark down here." I honestly was shitting my pants. Sarah, on the other hand, was furious that someone was playing with her emotions that way. She kept receiving texts that only they knew about, and some weird, disturbing pictures. She got a phone call from him. She picked it up, and she could only hear some sort of breathing. It was really, really weird. After that night, we kept experiencing some unexplained things. Like every time we go out and come back, we find things misplaced, like lights on, our stuff missing, and Liam's phone is on. All of these things were really disturbing for me. My toenails were painted black. The sheets on the hospital bed were rough against my bare legs, and the blanket the nurse had given me was even rougher. My foot poked out of the blanket, and all I could stare at were my toes. My toenails were painted black. They told me I had been in a car accident. My car had flipped over many times, and it was dumb luck that I was alive. I didn't remember much of the accident, but I could definitely feel all of the bones I had broken. I remember driving, and another car speeding towards me, and then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. My toenails were painted black. It just didn't make sense. I hated the color black, and I didn't even remember painting my toes, let alone the color black. The door to my room suddenly opened. "Are you okay?" I relaxed a bit, knowing that my husband was here. I gave him a small smile and a shrug, happy to be alive. He was staring at me, at my injuries, trying to see if I was lying or not. I had a meeting with a client in the city when I got the call from the hospital. That's why I'm so late. I'm so sorry. Don't worry, I've been having the time of my life here. My husband gave a small, choked laugh and sat down in the chair next to my bed. He was staring at me, scanning the length of my body, utterly shocked that I was alive. Looks like we also have that in common. "Do you remember anything from the accident?" he asked. "Nope, I remember driving and then nothing." I felt disappointed that I didn't have more to offer anyone. No white light or anything. I gave a snort. This isn't a movie. I wasn't sitting in a waiting room deciding whether or not to come back to life. He had a small smile on his face. Not every day you get to talk to someone who had a near-death experience. Let's hope I'm the only person you know that almost died. There was a question that was nagging at me that I so badly wanted to ask. What client were you meeting with today? My husband was a third-grade teacher. What kind of a client would he have needed to meet? A frown immediately appeared. The new client interested in our firm. He needed representation for the lawsuit. I told you this last week. Do you not remember? My heart stopped. I didn't know what to say, and I was afraid of being trapped in the hospital for longer than I already was. I gave him a laugh and hoped that was enough to dissuade him. Jokes. I thought you needed a good laugh. Amnesia and broken bones are a wicked combination. I could tell. He didn't believe me, but thankfully, he let it go. I also had another question, and I was scared of his response, but I needed to ask this too. Oh, also, if you're here, where's Daisy? Daisy was our daughter, and I was immediately filled with a concern over who was watching her if both my husband and I were sitting here. She's with your parents, totally safe and missing you. They send their love, by the way. I relaxed a bit. Daisy loved her grandparents, but I was ready to get out of the hospital. My husband could sense my restlessness to get out of the hospital, and he gave another smile. Come on, let's get out of here. I think I might have a concussion. I'm debating going back to the hospital and asking the doctor who examined me for a refund. We made it home a few minutes ago and I just feel off. Kind of like looking at yourself in a funhouse mirror. Everything seemed right, but it was just slightly off. The carpet was too soft and the walls were the wrong shade of gray, even down to the smell of our living room. I flinched at the sound of the doorbell. I could see my mom through the window. At least she looked the same. I opened the door and she gave me the biggest hug. She was crying, and then I was crying. It was nice to be alive. I couldn't wait any longer. Is Daisy with you? My mom gave a small laugh and then pointed through the door. She is safe and sound as promised. There my dad was, walking towards me, holding a small dog, white, small, and fluffy. Cute, but not my daughter. This was getting too strange for me. My dad gave me a hug and held up the dog, waving its little paw. Look who missed you. Say hi, Daisy. I could feel the meal I had at the hospital coming back up. Suddenly, feeling extremely nauseated, I excused myself and sprinted upstairs. I threw the door open to what should have been Daisy's nursery, and instead found a home office, without a trace that my daughter had lived there. I tore apart room after room, searching for some proof that my daughter had existed, but I could find nothing. In my closet, I ripped apart boxes of boxes before I remembered that I had a folder where I kept important documents for my husband and me. Nestled deep in the folder was a hospital stay bill with my name and the big glaring word, miscarriage. Also in the folder was an adoption certificate for a dog named Daisy, dated mere months after the supposed hospital visit. I sank to the floor with the sickening realization that this was not my life. Something had changed after the car accident. Like everyone was in on some sick practical joke, and this was the spectacular punchline. I knew that there was only one thing to do. I had grabbed my husband's spare car keys from the bedroom, took the back door out of the house, and I'm now sitting in his car, that I just parked on a random street. I'm sharing this story with you all as proof that this really happened. This is not my life, and I can't stay here. It's just not right. I'm going to stop this the only way I know how, by going back to the beginning. Goodbye. I'm going to get my life back. My daughter asked me where nightmares come from. I told her the story my father told me, and his father told him. Long ago, there were no nightmares, only memories. Memories of the things that men do and the things men see. Then sometime around the 5th century, during the migration of Germanic tribes into what would become most of Western Europe, there was a lord, and like many lords of the time, he acquired land. He acquired this land the way everyone acquired land then. He conquered it. It was in the aftermath of a particularly brutal battle, near the edges of a deep crevasse, that the Lord found a pale child wandering among the littered corpses. It was a girl, blackened by smoke and stained with the spattered blood of the fallen. She had dark eyes and a misshapen body with deformities that made even the bravest soldiers avoid her gaze and step from her path. Now this Lord was a generous one, loved by his men and his people, and he felt pity for this impish girl, and he took her in, raising her within the confines of his castle. He named the girl Nocturne for her dark eyes, and her peculiar habit of avoiding sleep and staying up late into the night, seemingly for days and weeks at a time. Despite her appearance, Nocturne soon showed a jester's talent for making the Lord and the neighboring aristocracy laugh and enjoy themselves at her stories, tales, and tricks. This Lord also had a handsome son, a prince who would one day inherit the throne, the castle, and its lands. The prince, like the others, enjoyed the antics of this little girl who was always by his father's side, telling stories and riddles to delight the crowd. But each night, the prince would watch as Nocturne would whisper into the Lord's ear at day's end, leaving the prince to question this girl jester, and the way his father seemed so enthralled by such a grotesque and deformed comedian who never seemed to sleep. Soon, the prince was of age, and he prepared to leave the castle for his studies. He embraced his father tightly, knowing they would not see each other for years. As he rode away, leaving the only home he knew for the very first time, he glanced back at the castle and the people surrounding his waving father. The last thing he saw before the castle slipped from view was Nocturne, there at his father's side, whispering her whispers in his ear. The stories reached the prince in the final year of his schooling. They seemed fantastical at first, claiming that his father had become a monster, a bane to his very land. It seemed the Lord had begun taxing his people harshly and imprisoning any who could not pay, condemning them to the bowels of the castle to await some form of trial and eventually a horrible death. There were tales of lavish, sin-fueled parties where the Lord would fly into rages at others, often baiting guests into heated debates, only to shackle them in chains for disobeying his view or command. Neighboring lords and landowners avoided the castle, fearing the tales of torture and staying clear of the screams that lasted well into the night. And within each chilling account, what each witness never ceased to mention was that the girl Nocturne was there, with her strange whispers for only the Lord's ear. It seemed that Nocturne was either immune to the Duke's blood rage, or the very cause of it. Now, with this madness consuming his father, the prince was told that neighboring lords were preparing to siege the castle and divide its lands among them. As the prince rode quickly for home, he knew that any such battle would be short, since recent tales told that much of the castle had been abandoned, and now only the Lord and Nocturne lived within its bloodied walls. As the prince neared the castle, he galloped past the villages he remembered as a young man. Once vibrant and alive, they were now shells of towns filled with the starving, the desperate, and the dead. The castle road was littered with bloated corpses, and the creek he once played in as a boy ran red with blood. The prince burst into the castle, sword drawn, and called for his father. From a splintered bench in the corner of the throne room, the Lord's feeble voice replied. The prince's father was now thin, with sunken eyes and trembling hands, but he stood feebly and reached longingly for his son. The prince embraced his father and asked if the stories were true. The Lord nodded, shame washing over his pale face. Gripping his sword tight, the prince roared for Nocturne, vowing to end this damnable reign of madness. She appeared behind him, whispering a welcome to the prince. She was seated on the Lord's throne, her small, crooked body dwarfed by the immense gilded chair. The prince lunged at Nocturne, but his sword was halted inches from her throat by the call of his father, who cried, "No!" In labored gasps, the weak lord told his son that Nocturne was no girl, but a witch raised from hell that day on the battlefield. It was her whispers, her foul and tiny voice in his ear that spread the madness, a rain of nightly tales of horror that he would in turn make real by day. The Lord said he kept Nocturne here in the castle, fearing that her tales, should they spread through the land, would inflict the very same horrors that happened here at his home. With this, the Lord gripped his son's hand, looked to Nocturne's black eyes, and let out his last cold breath. The prince's eyes filled with tears, seeing his dead father. As for Nocturne, she laughed. It was a tiny laugh, but a laugh that filled the prince with rage. He stood and stared into the eyes of that small witch, and in one swift motion, sank his sword through her down to its hilt. Nocturne's laugh went silent, and her eyes bulged black. Dark blood seeped from her stunted mouth. A watery, bubbling sound crept up from deep within her, traveling up her throat and past her bloodied lips. It was one last whisper, an evil sound that echoed throughout the castle, past its gates, past its lands, and rang out into our world. Years went by, and the prince was eventually killed in battle, and the castle was divided among the aristocracy. The tale of Nocturne, the Lord, and the prince was almost lost to time and the long shadows of a growing and aging Europe. But some still share the tale of the sleepless Nocturne, the girl who was something not human, a creature beyond the grip of sleep, or night, or day. For what the king said that day to his son was true. When Nocturne was killed, she was released into the ether and sent adrift into our world. She is now free to whisper to more than just one old lord. Her whispered stories and tales and riddles can now reach us all while we sleep. Gone are the kings, dukes, and lands of old. Now there are factories, industry, automobiles, and airplanes. But Nocturne remains, creeping silently into the bedrooms of men, of women, and especially of children. As she did with that long-dead lord, she whispers into your ear while you sleep, and breathes vile tales of terror, of dread, and the drip, drip, drip of human poisons she has witnessed on this earth. Maybe she'll whisper in your ear, or maybe she already has, because like I told my daughter, she is where nightmares come from.